The lights of Madison Square Garden burned like stars pulled down from the night sky, pouring over the ring where two men stood on the edge of violence and history. It was a collision of worlds. Gennady Golovkin, the soft-spoken destroyer from Kazakhstan whose fists had rewritten the middleweight division, and Curtis Stevens, Brooklyn's own walking KO threat with a left hook that could shut out the lights of a city block. As the tail of the tape flashed, the crowd's roar simmered into anticipation. 3 years of age difference, inches of reach, reputations carved not by words, but by the thudding truth of punches. Stevens muttered what felt like a promise to himself and to the world. "It's my time." Golovkin, unblinking, simply waited. The bell hadn't rung yet, but already the air felt tight, charged, alive, with the electricity of two fighters who understood exactly what the other was capable of. The referee's instructions sounded almost distant under the tension. Gloves touched. A deep inhalation swept through the arena. And then, ding, the story began. Round 1, unfolding like the slow tightening of a cinematic lens, focusing on two men, testing the borders of each other's danger. The early minutes were a study in patience and precision. Golovkin slid forward behind a jab that snapped like a steel cable, penetrating, stiff, reminiscent of the great big men, Foreman, Lennox Lewis, pounding the air until the sound echoed off the canvas. Stevens, compact, explosive, refused to be overwhelmed. Every time Triple G extended that jab, Curtis fired something back, a counter hook, a quick right, a reminder that his power didn't need space, only timing. Golovkin respected that. He stayed disciplined, never reckless, pressing with purpose, but not with haste. Stevens landed a few sharp hooks to the body and upstairs, enough to draw murmurs from the crowd, enough to remind Golovkin that the man across from him wasn't a sacrificial opponent. He was a threat. The final 10 seconds of the round erupted into traded leather, Golovkin trying to punctuate it with authority, while Stevens showed he wasn't intimidated by the middleweight champion stalking him. Back in the corner, Stevens' trainers urged bodywork and confidence. Golovkin's corner simply nodded, calm, certain, knowing the fight had only begun. The numbers favored Gennady, but numbers were never the story. Pressure was, tension was, and both men carried those into round 2. The second round cracked like thunder. Golovkin, now settled, now reading Stevens' rhythm, began to widen the windows for his power. His jab hurted Stevens, pushing him backward inch by inch, a quiet suffocation. And then it came, the first major turning point. Delivered not with elegance, but with brutality. A devastating right hand detonated against Stevens' head, snapping it sideways, and the crowd gasped as Stevens dropped violently to the canvas. The sound was explosive, the kind that ripples through your skin. Stevens looked up at his corner, with dazed eyes, but a fighting heart. He rose, covered up, survived the remaining seconds as Golovkin stormed forward with predatory patience, searching for the finishing blow, but never losing form. The bell saved Stevens, but the damage was done. In the corner, he was reminded not to back straight up, to stay off the ropes, to stay alive. Golovkin, meanwhile, remained calm, a hunter who had tasted blood, but understood the hunt was far from over. He would break Stevens down methodically. But Curtis was not ready to surrender. Even hurt, he remained dangerous, and Golovkin knew that the kind of man who could rise from that kind of knockdown carried both pride and power in dangerous amounts. Rounds 3 through 6 became a war of wills disguised as a boxing match. Stevens showed remarkable resilience, regaining his legs, firing back counters that snapped Golovkin's head, just enough to let the crowd remember his left hook was real. Every time Golovkin pinned him to the ropes, Stevens answered with something: an uppercut, a right hand, a quick burst of combinations, punches that reminded everyone why Golovkin never rushed blindly. But Golovkin's pressure was not ordinary pressure. It was a slow drowning. He walked Stevens down with the same jab, but now mixed in slicing rights to the head and thunderous hooks to the body. The sound of those body shots echoed, thick, deep, the kind of punches that bend ribs and drain resolve. Stevens gasped but refused to fold, fighting with a stubborn fury that earned the respect of even Golovkin's fans. The middle rounds revealed Golovkin's craft, hooking off the jab, cutting the ring, forcing Stevens into corners like he'd studied his steps before the fight even began. Stevens had moments, flashes of success, bursts of bravery, landing crisp rights and left hooks that brought the crowd to their feet. But Triple G never stepped back in fear. He stepped back only to create space for punishment. By the 7th round, the fight had taken on the smell of inevitability. Stevens was still dangerous, wildly dangerous, but he was also breaking. His punches no longer carried the same explosion. His movement slowed. His guard rose later and later with each Golovkin combination. Triple G sensed it. The Kazakh fighter, known for knockouts but often overlooked for his technical brilliance, painted Stevens' guard with a barrage of creative offense. Uppercuts splitting the middle, hooks digging the body, right hands crashing overhead. Stevens fought back hard, refusing to be passive, refusing to be bullied. But his answers came slower and with less conviction. Each exchange chipped away at him. Each body shot folded him an inch deeper. His corner screamed warnings, telling him that the ropes were death, that he had to stay off them, that the corner where Golovkin had hurt him twice was cursed ground. But exhaustion leads men exactly where they know not to go, and Stevens found himself backed against those same ropes again and again, Golovkin stalking him like a shadow he couldn't shake. Then came the 8th round, the breaking point. Golovkin unleashed hell with disciplined precision. Heavy hooks ransacked Stevens' body. Right hands bashed through his guard. An uppercut snapped his head back like a hinge forced open. Stevens tried to fire back, but the punches came out heavy, labored, more heart than technique. The abuse mounted. 3 ripping body shots, a crushing right cross, another uppercut, and still Stevens remained standing, refusing to fall, refusing to give up the one thing he still had, pride. But his corner saw what the crowd saw. His legs were shaking beneath him. His face had begun to glaze. He was absorbing more than a man should have to take. The bell ended the round, but Stevens didn't walk to his corner. He trudged. And before the 9th could begin, Coach Andre Rosier stepped in front of him, placed a hand on his fighter's arm, and made the decision that great trainers make when bravery becomes danger. Stop. The referee nodded. Stevens exhaled, relieved yet devastated. The corner had saved their fighter. The arena erupted in applause. Respect, not celebration, for the heart Stevens showed and the mastery Golovkin displayed. And so the official announcement came. Knockout victory at the end of round 8. Gennady Triple G Golovkin. But the story of the fight was larger than the statistics, larger than the knockdown, larger even than Golovkin's dominance. It was a story about 2 men meeting in a ring where truth is revealed, punch by punch. Golovkin showed why he was feared, because he could hurt you, break you, and yet remain calm, calculated, almost surgical in the way he dismantled opponents. Stevens showed why boxing fans love fighters who dare, because even when buried under punishment, he never gave his spirit. Under the lights, amid the chants, with cameras capturing every drop of sweat and courage, this was more than a highlight. It was a portrait of boxing's brutal beauty. Golovkin walked out the victor, his legend growing, his aura sharpening. But Stevens walked out with something equally powerful, the respect of a crowd that witnessed a man absorb hell and refuse to bow. And in that arena, with the echoes of applause rising around them, both warriors added another page to the timeless story of what happens when pride, power, and heart collide inside the ropes.